Welcome to the Winners of Sheffield podcast. We are here at the University of Sheffield podcast studio, our first one. Like what you done with the place, Trav? Done it well.
Yeah.
So we're here with Becca Morris.
Hello.
Of Benchmark Recruitment. I feel if we were on Radio 2 or one show, you would have got a small applause for that introduction. So
we'll get some candid.
We'll get some applause on that. Thanks for joining us, Becca.
Thank you.
Taking time out your schedule to join us.
A pleasure.
Like the studio?
I think it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, you're our first one.
In fact,
here.
this whole build, I've not been in this building before.
It's nice, isn't
very
it? Yeah,
impressive.
I think it's the most money they've invested in the building.
It's lovely.
So, yeah.
Really, really nice.
The wave up at near Broomhill is really nice as well. I've got to say that, but I'm not on a uni tour. So, as I said, Winners Sheffield podcast, what we do is we start on people's journeys, basically, a long chat, and then start from the beginning to current day, present day. So, away, stage is yours.
Over to me.
So, basically,
yeah.
So you mentioned you're not from Sheffield originally?
I'm not from Sheffield, no. So I'm from Herefordshire, Welsh border. Grew up in the middle of nowhere in the tiny, teeny little village. And both my parents were teachers, so always knew that I wasn't going to do that. And also knew that I wanted to move out, wanted to go to uni and, go to a city, I suppose. I actually visited a few universities around the country.
Yeah.
Leeds, Manchester, some down south.
Sheffield.
But there was some... Well, yeah, no, I came to Sheffield. Literally, I remember getting off the train in Sheffield thinking, this kind of feels like home, but bigger, which is exactly what I wanted.
Right.
Manchester was scary. Leeds was scary, actually, because it's just a bit bigger, just that big, bigger buildings, bigger, tiny little village life. That was quite... I'm just not sure I could see myself entirely fitting into that. Got straight off the train in Sheffield and was like, yeah, I'll come here. This is good for me. Yeah,
So
and I've been here since...
You come to uni here?
Yeah.
Yeah, where were you based? Which uni?
Hallam.
Hallam, so where are you based in? Is that town there?
Yeah, so in Halls I was in town.
Yeah.
Then I ended up Ecky Road way.
Yeah.
I was on just off Division Street.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
great. Yeah.
Big time for
Yeah.
Halls there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what did you study there?
So I studied communication studies, which is quite a kind of broad degree. Flirted with the idea of maybe journalism or media, and the communications degree was a blend of psychology and media, basically, which I loved. And I studied that at college. Really enjoyed it during college. So they did a course at Hallam at that time. So studied, graduated in 2010, and I'd partied through the whole credit crunch, basically.
Yeah.
No idea what was going off. Graduated and was like, okay, I need to get a job.
Yeah.
I was so the person that I was with at the time in a relationship with was from here, so I decided to stay, and so I thought, right, fine. So I have to get a job up here, and had no contacts. Had lots of my friends had moved home. Literally was just me to find needing to find a job. So it's quite daunting.
Right.
There weren't any jobs. First job I got was a legal secretarial role for a law firm in Barnsley. Not my vibe. Worked hard, good foundation of admin and supporting people and working with teams, but it was not the career path for me long term.
And when did you, like I say to people on the podcast, what was that moment click where you said, this is the direction I want to go in?
I don't know if that actually clicked until I was already doing what I'm doing, to be honest. So I worked for a law firm in Barnsley, then moved to a law firm in Sheffield, moved house and, was here in Sheffield. Worked within wills and probate. And there was a moment, but it wasn't a moment of, oh, now I know what to do. I knew that I didn't want to do that anymore. And that was around people fighting over money. I remember, honestly, there was this one guy that had died and he'd left his estate to friends, and he must have been quite a lonely man. I don't think he had a life full of, people.
Yeah.
Left, anyway, it's very clear with his instructions of where his money was to go. And all these people came out of the woodwork and then started kicking off. Well, why am I not entitled to him? I'm his, 14th cousin removed. What do you mean? And I just thought, I'm not built for that. I don't like that. That is absolutely not something I'm prepared to have in my life day to day. So that was the moment I knew I didn't want to do that. But then I saw a legal recruitment consultant job advertised at Benchmark. And if I'm honest, I didn't know anything. I just saw legal, know that, I'm doing that. That looks like it's about people. That's what I definitely, want my life to be part of and my career to be kind of formed of. Applied, went through the interview process and got offered the job. And I think actually it was probably you know, when I was actually doing the role full flow, you know, I'd got my head around
Yeah.
recruitment, was in, you know, day to day kind of becoming good at it, that I realised, oh, actually, I really like this.
I think it's the age old. Most people in recruitment will tell you that
Yeah.
they've fallen into it rather than set out to go in that direction.
Absolutely. I'm sure it was similar for you, James. For you?
Well, for me, I actually, ironically, I went to university later on as a mature student with all the intention of getting out of a sales job. That was the, and I did actually meet a couple of recruiters whilst I was at university,
Right.
and I decided that was the route that I wanted to go in. But ironically, I think, you know, I'm back in a sales job. Let's be honest with you, it's still very much sales orientated, isn't it? So
Absolutely.
but yeah, I mean, to be fair, I asked. We met with Louisa this morning from Benchmark, or obviously founder of Benchmark, and I was asking her, did you have that smooth transition into recruitment? Because I felt like I'd fallen into it. I probably joined the wrong business at the time, which I won't mention. Had a really good manager who I really enjoyed working with, but spent the whole year just sort of cutting my teeth, not really enjoying what I was doing, and sort of thinking, I can't wait to get 12 months under my belt and out of here.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously you'll have had a completely different experience to that. by the sounds of things.
Probably. What I loved about Benchmark immediately was its kind of boutique feel. You know, I have lifelong friends that I've made, as you know, from employees at Benchmark, even people that I managed. There was always that feel, and I loved the story. I remember my second interview with Louisa and how she talked about how, you know, she'd started recruitment and how, you know, she'd obviously had her moment of, hang on, I can do this better and differently, and it can be more ethical, and all of that completely aligns with me. And I do remember there was a point, you know, when I was probably getting quite good at it, that I also realised, I think I'm good at this because I like people. I'm actually not motivated by targets. I'm not motivated by any kind of transaction. You know, any kind of job spec that just lands on my lap, that's, you know, just find us someone. It doesn't work for me at all. What I love is that relationship, is that really delving deep into somebody and or a business, and then matching that culture match on that, which I'm sure is the same for you.
Well, I was saying to, because Ian leads the interviews, I'm not going to lie, on the podcast, and I don't think you got much sleep last night, did you?
No, 3 hours.
3 hours
why I
sleep,
got
so you're
bags.
working a night shift, and then, but just listening to him interview Louisa, I was like, he should be in recruitment, mate, because he's all over. For me, I'll be honest with you, it's more about I love the interaction, meeting with people.
Yeah.
I always sort of joke, but in a serious way, I've been in recruitment for 10 years. I've never read a CV in its entirety. I've never read a job spec in its entirety. I'm more about matching up the people with the culture of the business. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So
Totally get
when did you join Benchmark Recruitment, and when did that journey begin?
I'd say it was probably around 2013.
Right.
Yeah, about 2013. So I did
Yeah.
I did a good 2 to 3 years in law, and then about 2013. Yeah, because I've done it for just nearly 12
Had you
years
just
now.
got fed up with the law aspect, or just?
Yeah,
just
well,
fancy a
it's
change,
never
yeah.
how I wanted to kind of carve out my
Yeah.
career anyway. I was in a very secretarial role. Also, I knew that there were probably a million people that would have done anything they could to have my job, because law was so competitive. And so I was kind of progressing into more of a fee-earning role within legal,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to be there. And I felt guilty about that. You know, I wasn't going to work with a spring in my step thinking, how fantastic, I'm going to progress my career in this because I love wills and probate. I didn't, and I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I felt that quite heavily.
I'm assuming it was quite corporate, and I've always found that until more recently, the recruitment firms I worked at were corporate, and just not me at all. But it doesn't sound like Benchmark or you know, both when you joined and now are that corporate.
No. I'd say it was probably slightly more corporate when I joined Benchmark to how it is now, and probably latter years. But no. And again, that attracted me to it. It is genuinely around relationships and bending and flexing around your clients and candidates, rather than, no, we do it this way, which, you know, I'm not so built for. And perhaps law was too rigid for me in that sense.
So when you got into recruitment at Benchmark, what were your initial thoughts? Did you think, I'm here for a couple of years, or this is what I want to go?
I'm not sure. Honestly, for the first couple of years, it was such a whirlwind. It was so fast paced. It was so full on, trying to build an account base. I mean, James, I'm sure you know what that's like. You come in, it's a cold desk. You're like, oh my God, I've got a target on my head. I need to hit it, and I want to be part of the team hitting their target. So I am competitive whilst I don't work the targets now. I'm quite competitive and I want to put my effort in for everyone as well.
Were you straight in on a perm desk?
Yeah. And actually specialised in law to start with.
Right.
And then carved out into more commercial roles.
Did you start in law because you come from that background?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I remember we worked in a financial in brackets institution.
That's where me and him.
Okay.
Where we had to hit targets and we had to make appointments and get people on board and take out loans, etc. and all that, basically to rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. But I used to go home some nights, I'm not going to lie, and I'd be going home thinking, oh my God, I'm not hitting this, if I don't hit this, I'm not doing that. And sometimes it used to play. How did you used to play on you stuff like hitting
Massively.
targets? I used to think I'm just gonna be job chopping all the time here, because if I don't hit this, then they quite simply they move you on if you're not doing your job, are you?
There was always that level of being slightly terrified that I wasn't doing enough, even though I've only ever had such supportive managers. I can only say amazing things about Louisa and anyone else that was a manager at Benchmark for me. But yeah, it weighed really heavy, and it still does actually. Even though I work for myself, I've still that kind of momentum and pressure is still absolutely in my day-to-day life.
You speak to people.
I was saying this week, as a career, it always feels like you're robbing Peter to feed Paul. If you're doing that, you're kind of neglecting this over here. And since I've gone independent and doing my own thing, that's only that's gone up tenfold, because now I'm not doing the marketing, I'm not doing, the social media side of things. I mean, I rarely advertise roles, so it's sort of more about, I'm very much doing it under the radar, and this is really the main sort of social media I'm doing, which is obviously rarely going to gain me business, but I'm sure you understand when you're doing your own thing, it's sort of quite difficult to balance, what direction you want to go in as well.
And that is something that I must admit I have not struggled with. That sounds very negative, but had to really find my feet with. So when I'm sure we'll talk about the MBO, but when Benchmark became my business in 22, I knew I wanted to rebrand it and I knew I wanted to make it mine. And there was a future plan, and that's what I'm following, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But I definitely had a few kind of crisis moments as part of that, because Benchmark had always had that structure of a marketing team, and they'd had the visuals, don't know if you remember them, but they were of the kids and what you wanted to be when you grew up, which was brilliant.
Really
and the reason that I chose to move on from that was that was in place just before I joined Benchmark, and that so felt right for that period of Benchmark. And I still look at it and smile and love it, but it just doesn't feel like me. And I knew that I was going to, move Benchmark on, and the second business that I'm setting up it was always part of that. But I've had a few moments where I've thought, and I'll write random posts about, I just love nature and trees and stuff, and I'll be like, look at this tree, and it's a genuine thought of how this tree forms part of some day-to-day life or decision that I've made. Sometimes I'll put something on LinkedIn and think, really, do people get that or want to read about that, or do they just think you're not okay? But I've had to just stay true to myself and be authentic, I suppose.
Definitely.
Like, that is actually me, and genuinely how I feel and think, and how I can align recruitment in my head to what's going on in the wider world. But I've had a few moments where I've thought, I
always thought when you start off in recruitment, and then when I was young, I had to deal with a few agencies and all that, and it became like they were actors, because they'd rehearsed a pitch so well in their head to help guide everyone on. It became like every agency I went to, it was a bit robotic. Did you get me? It was like, if you do this and that, and then if you go to this, and everyone was saying the same thing rather than the actual roles you were going for. It was a bit like you were on the machine.
Yeah.
And you pass on to when you were trying to hit your targets, stuff like that. What type of, I guess what I'm saying is, what type of methods and stuff did you use to try and get your targets going?
I think I've only ever been able to be authentic. Genuinely, I've never done well with blagging, with saying a role is brilliant if it's not, which is, again, takes me back to that transactional recruitment piece that I'm just not prepared to do. I cannot sit in front of a candidate and tell them that a job I'm selling them is brilliant if I don't think it's brilliant.
Yeah,
I just can't do
that's what I'm
it.
saying,
And I'm sure I have done that. I'm sure when I was cutting my teeth early days in recruitment, I probably did do that because I would have just worked roles that would have become available, and, you know, I'm sure I would have filled them. But I absolutely interviewed candidates genuinely, would give them genuine feedback, and certainly wouldn't sell jobs to people. Right. And even now will say, you know, I know you're saying you can do this job standing on your head, and I don't doubt you, but they're not the right business for you, or for whatever reason, this isn't going to work. Good, I think honesty and integrity is just so important in recruitment. And you know, and there are so many recruiters out there, aren't there?
Yeah, that's the problem.
You know, we know that, and I'm sure there are so many brilliant ones, but there are ones that aren't doing it genuinely.
I think that's what I say a lot of the time is, and again, this is not to slate all recruiters, but I think like what Robbo was saying there is a lot of just on a mission to get bums on seats and that kind of thing. So I don't think it's that difficult sometimes to stand out and actually sort of, like you said, be a bit more sort of stand back. Is this the right role for you? Because I moved around a lot more and been unhappy where I've worked at times, I've ended up speaking to Michelle Waterworth. I don't know whether you'll have ever spoken to her. She's a rec to rec. And, you know, me and her sort of, she was one of the people who sort of said, go and do your own thing rather than go and work for somebody else. And, you know, we've had conversations about just doing the right thing. It's, you know, and it's not necessarily about karma, but it's that right energy. If you put something, you know, and I'll have a conversation. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, actually. I've not told you this, but I sort of said to her, listen, I'm not really the recruiter for you. You're probably better off speaking to somebody else who you're registered with. And she turned around and she said, well, I'm already registered with both you and Robert Glue. And I'm like, well, they're literally the two that I'd have said for you to sort of reach out for. And it's sort of like, you know, it's nice that there's a sort of behind the scenes community where we're all sort of getting on and working in collaboration. Couldn't
agree more.
How do you stay ahead though? How do you just said there's so many recruitment agencies there. How do you know what I mean? There's obviously competitions. How do you like stop people from going to others or grow your own brand? What's the secret behind that success?
All I can say is just being authentic and being me.
Yeah.
I'm fully aware that I won't be the recruiter of choice for everybody. And, you know, there are clients and candidates out there, just like James said, that aren't the right fit for me for whatever reason, and I'm not for them. But I think all I've ever done is just be myself. And, you know, I've evolved and grown in my career. You know, in nearly 12 years, I've obviously changed. I've grown. I've gone through enormous life changes. You know, that will have changed part of me in the way I do business. But just being authentic, being honest, that's my only recipe would be that. And whatever I do, wherever I end up, that's all I ever want to do.
It's strange because on the previous episode that we've recorded this morning with Louisa, and I didn't say it at the time, but she sort of, and I've done it a million times myself, she likened recruitment to the sort of dating game in the sense that, you know, you sort of see a business and you think, oh, I'd love to work with that business. And the ironic thing about it is it's all about perception, because a lot of the time, the very businesses that you think you want to work with, once you're actually working with them, you sort of think, yeah, I can see why you've got issues. And unfortunately, I think more and more in the current market, most businesses don't want to hear about their own problems. You know, it's sort of almost like, and I know it's cost me business, you know, both in the last couple of years when I was working for Nicholas Associates and now that I'm doing my own thing. I know that me sort of having those awkward conversations has probably cost me business. But like you say, better that than working with people who aren't interested in developing or improving their business in any way.
Well, this is it. And also, you don't know where that might end up in 4, 5, 7, 10 years. You just don't, do you?
No.
You know, everyone's changing, everyone's evolving, businesses change, you know, senior leaders leave and, I know, people progress up and that changes the business. I just think if you're just constantly genuine, authentic, and a nice sound person, you know, you'll end up working with the right people. And
not only that, it's despite or because it is very competitive, and I think like I've done in the last 6 months, there's a lot of people sort of all of a sudden popping up and doing their own thing. But you know, I sort of said this, and it's only a realisation once I've done it in the last couple of months. But for argument's sake, and I won't name any names, but if there's a big recruitment firm around here that employ 50 people, for argument's sake, and they all disbanded tomorrow, then you're not actually losing any market share because those 50 people will probably not pick up the amount of business that business did. So it's sort of all you're doing is spreading the love or spreading the business to a more, and like you say, it then allows people to pop up and have their own branding and their own sort of, like Louisa did and like you've done yourself. So.
Absolutely. Could not agree more.
What was Louisa like when you said, I'm changing the branding, when you saw you were changing the branding from where you wanted to go?
Lou was one of the first people that saw the draft of it, actually. Yeah. No, Lou has only ever been my biggest supporter. And, you know, when the MBO probably took about a year to go through something like that. Yeah. From start to finish, that was such an amicable, we both came at that from the right place. Yeah. I knew where I wanted to go. And also I knew where Lou wanted to go. And she the same for me. So she knew that I was going to kick it on. She knew that I would change it. I'd been very honest with her about that. But I remember them landing in my inbox. I'd had the brief with the agency that were redesigning, and I remember saying to Lou, I'd seen her at an event. I was like, I need to grab you at the end because I want you to see these first. And yeah, I'm sure she's only ever pleased for me.
Talk us through that moment then when you decided, right, I want to take this business on myself now and see how Lou goes. What was the thought?
Because I asked the question, was that more you pitching it to her or her pitching it to you kind of thing? And she sort of said it was a bit of both.
It was such a bit of both. So, like so many stories start, let's go back to lockdown. Yeah. the sunniest summer on record. Yeah. And I got...
That started in April.
But hey, my birthday's 5th of April, and I remember being outside on my whole birthday, like red hot sunshine. It was great. So I actually got COVID in the July of that year and was really quite poorly. I'd never really had any time off work up until that point, ever, I don't think. And I was really not well and had to have some time off work for the first time ever. And there was a moment as part of that. Firstly, we hadn't even had, I think maybe I'd had my first jab actually. We were just starting to see that, there might be light at the end of the tunnel. I'd worked, I'd carried Benchmark through the summer, and I'm sure Lou would agree with that. Lou was really entrenched with the chamber already at that point. I was holding Benchmark upright, loving it. Already probably knowing, I love this and I want to do this long term. Perhaps not having major thoughts about doing it on my own. But when I got sick and then I came back to work, I think there was some form of epiphany at some moment during that time of, I could just do this for myself. Okay. And I remember Lou and I going for a walk, and I think I probably said it like that, Lou, tell me why I shouldn't do this for me, on my own. And I remember her saying, if I was in your shoes, that's exactly, the conversation I'd be having back to you, basically. And that's where it started. We were walking, is it Lady Canning's? I remember exactly where we were. And that's where it started. And so we had a few discussions with other people, perhaps purchasing the business, because I didn't know what any of this really looked like. But when it came to it, and actually my thought on having the business strengthened through that, because I realised that anyone that was interested in buying it wanted to buy it because I would run it. And that made me think, well, I'll just run it then. Yeah. So if there's a way that Lou and I can make it work, and I am deeply passionate about her legacy within Benchmark moving, and moving forwards. I want Benchmark to, thrive and survive, not just for me, but that's huge for Amy and Lou, who also founded. Amy and Lou both founded Benchmark. I'm sure if you didn't know that.
Yeah, she mentioned.
Say that this morning.
Yeah. So I want it to live on, but in a different era under my watch, if you like. But yeah, it was completely amicable. From start to finish, still is. I still meet Lou for dinner and share all my ideas with her.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How stressful was the whole takeover process, the handover process and everything?
Not enormously stressful between Lou and I. I didn't love dealing with the bank, I will say. They're slow, aren't they? Yeah. Just things like that just got me down. Yeah. But no, the actual takeover was fine. By that point, I was already running the business and had been for quite a long time. I already was doing everything that I'm doing now. I was doing then. I just didn't own the business. So that handover was really quite slick, I suppose. I'm not even sure if I had a moment of like, oh my God, what have I just done? I don't think anything really hit me like that. It just kind of felt business as usual. I'm just now making some changes. I'm going to rebrand. I have to make decisions.
Yeah. So by chance, yesterday you made an announcement that you've just taken on Abby
Langstaff.
Thanks, Steph. And then you touched on that you were doing something a little bit different. So what is that?
Yeah.
What's your...
So this has always been part of my plan. So when I shared with you about, knowing that Benchmark was going to go into a new era, I knew that this was going to come, but I didn't know in what way. So I've always, I suppose, like touching on the candidate side, let's say, the kind of mentoring and coaching, I've always gone a bit further with that. So so many candidates come to me that aren't ready to look for work, or they shouldn't leave jobs. There's just things that need sorting within their life or the business that they're working in. And again, I'm really passionate about not just leaving a job for the sake of it, just because I've got a job there that might fit their kind of CV and skill set. So last year, without going into all the kind of depths of it, I ended up not very well, had a really, really stressful year. And I think I'm really, really grateful to that now, because that made me realise, so when you feel really low, when you're really stressed, when you're really tired, what do you need? Well, you need somebody to pick you up a little bit, but just listen and support you and let you go blur, and then help you, build that back into kind of standard language and work out where you want to be. So I'd already decided I was going to go down this route. So my new business is called Benchmark Pathways, because I want to keep it as part of Benchmark, but also I think everyone I meet is on a pathway going somewhere, sometimes forwards, but not always, and that's okay. So the first formation of Benchmark Pathways is around career coaching, mentoring, but also workshopping in businesses. So, for example, I've got a client that is going to kind of probably at the very least double in the next couple of years. They've already got a burnt out team. They're already stressed. They're going to bring more people into that. Brilliant. They're going to win more business. Brilliant. But what does that mean when you've already got a really tired team? You're going to lose good people. You're potentially not getting the best out of those people. So I want to go in and kind of help and support those businesses to kind of bolster up a bit. And then help them obviously recruit in and grow organically through that without losing good people. So that's the kind of first formation of Pathways. And Abby, who has just joined the business yesterday, she's got around 10 years experience within recruitment. She's actually had her own business before. So the idea is she's going to come in and support me on the recruitment side, because I don't want to let that go. I want to be selfish here. I don't want to let go of my client base. I love recruitment still, but I also know, if I was a candidate, I think I'd be coming, say to you, James, saying, I think I'm just ready for a new challenge. Like, I really love this, but I think I'm ready to kick on a bit.
Yeah.
But I don't want to find a new job. I still want, I still want to do Benchmark. I just want to do something else alongside it. So that is my plan. So Benchmark, Recruit and Pathways will hopefully be a kind of ecosystem of candidates who might, come to me saying, help, I want to completely change the direction of my career. We'll then come over to Pathways, let's sort you out, then we'll throw you back into Benchmark Recruit and we'll help you find a job. But equally deal with clients when they're saying, can you come in and help support our team? Or we want to, lots of people have left. Will you help us with retention? Will you help us with resilience? Whatever it might be. Yeah. So that is the plan. Two companies that will kind of run concurrently together.
What have your main influences been in your career?
So one of my biggest influences, this is not really aligned to recruitment at all, was probably my mum. Yeah. Who, so my mum was a teacher.
She's still teaching?
No, she's retired now. But my mum was a teacher, but she was one of these teachers that ended up kind of head of everything and had, all the responsibilities and duties thrown on top of her. But there was something about her seeing my mum go to work. Now, that is not me saying for a second that women that don't go to work after they have kids, aren't doing it right. Absolutely not. But mum was quite inspirational in that sense. Very. I think, she went back to work very quickly. I've got two brothers and she did the same for all three of us. But I watching my mum go to work and achieve qualifications and, additional, initially enhancing her career was very inspirational to me. Louise is obviously a huge influence for me. Yeah. Of course she is. She and I worked together for so long through my recruitment.
Influencing me today. I was sat there and I was like, wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, we were a force together. Yeah, definitely we were a force. And, in so many ways our skill sets blended, which probably made us, brilliant. And I will say Rob, who runs Glue Recruit, he was my manager. He actually hired me at Benchmark and was an enormous support in that kind of infancy of my recruitment career. He and I got on extremely well, but I'd say he backed me, he supported me, he definitely influenced me.
Such a nice bloke as well. I mean,
absolutely.
Again, Rob is another reason why I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about potentially going and working for him, and he just kept coming round to, why don't you just do it? And it was, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, I'm facing some of the challenges I thought I would do. But again, without Rob sort of giving me that nudge, I don't think I'd have probably done it.
What's the client base like? How many have you got at the moment at Benchmark, roughly?
Oh, it's up and down each year.
Okay.
I mean, I couldn't say exactly how many clients I work with as through my career.
Yeah.
Tons and tons of businesses. And I work across all sorts of industries and sectors on purpose as well. I don't know if you're the same, James.
Now, when people ask me what I specialise in, I tend to say recruitment rather than engineering manufacturing. That was one of the things that I probably want to speak to you about, is about getting into those different markets and how I do that. Because you end up being, you just do engineering, manufacturing roles, so they're the roles that you get.
Is there any specific area you're covering at the minute, or that you hire mainly into, so to speak?
Anything in an office. So I've got literally, my client base spans finance, engineering, manufacturing. I have got legal. I've got fleet management. And that's why I love recruitment. It is. I don't know, because I've never done it. I'm not sure how great I would be at just niching into, say, manufacturing. I like that. 1 minute I am in a meeting, that side of town, and the next I'm over there. I love that.
I love the variety.
Yeah.
I must admit, because I worked in rail recruitment for 12 months, and then I joined Brewster Partners, and over there, or Brewster Patap as it was at the time, I went into engineering manufacturing, and I felt like I was missing a trick, because everyone else was really niche and just doing. And then the more and more I thought about it, I just sort of thought, no, I love the variety. And then I was at Nicholas Associates most recently, and they wanted to bring in that sort of specialised model and wanted to start compartment. And I just thought, no, it's not for me. No. If I built a relationship, I already had to pass over roles where I'd created that relationship.
That's it,
I already had to pass over roles that were in different areas. But now there were roles that I would historically recruit. I was going to have to put other people in, and I just thought it's not for me. That, because like you say, it's more about the relationship,
of course it is,
than the knowledge of. At the end of the day, I mean, I don't personally understand the obsession with recruiters having to be degree qualified. You don't need a degree to recruit. It's sort of, we've all, I mean, today we talked to Louisa's degree is not related to recruitment. Mine's not. Well, mine's business, so it's more sort of high and wide. Yours is not, by the sounds of things. I mean, communications is obviously pivotal, but
I couldn't agree more. And there's nothing that excites me more than a job spec landing on my lap when I'm like, I ain't got a clue what that means. Right, please, can you Fisher Price that to me? Can you explain to me exactly what you need? And then you go out and speak to candidates, and you learn from them. And I'll say to a candidate, I don't work in your world, so you need to talk to me in a language to help me understand what you do.
And they love that, because it makes them feel important, doesn't it? If you try and compete with them on the knowledge, like I know all about this, then that's going to only alienate them and put them off. Whereas, like you say, I'm a little bit more like, teach me, tell me about this. And never be afraid to ask what might be deemed as a stupid question.
I could not agree more. And that's what keeps it exciting, I think.
Career coaching and life coaching seems to be growing by the and days. Where are they coming? Where the background are they coming from? How are they going to influence the pathways model?
Do you mean in terms of coaches that are coming up through the ranks?
And then can help like the pathway side, like going into businesses. How are they? Where are they coming from?
I wonder.
They weren't around when I was.
No, it's funny, isn't it? And I agree. I've noticed.
I could have done with one.
Well, there you go. There you go. I think, I'm not sure exactly where they're all coming from, other than those that I know have been perhaps slightly senior in businesses and seen where things aren't going well. I would say most coaches are empaths and love people and want to help people and then carve out, which is probably what I'm doing, really. I've mastered my skill within recruitment and I love it and I'm passionate about it, but I also actually just love the people side and I want to help and I want people to be the best versions of them. But to do that, sometimes you need a bit of propping up and supporting and coaching. So loads of coaches that I've come into contact with in most recent years have kind of followed that path.
Will you be employing type of coach for the pathway side or to go into businesses or not? Or for your recruitment?
I'm going to say, in terms of recruiting into pathways,
yeah.
I think we'll see. I think to
Yeah.
start with, so I'm carrying out my own qualification within kind of coaching and therapy. So that will be that's something that I'll be able to say I'm fully accredited. Perhaps I will. I haven't got a master plan on that, if I'm being honest.
Who do you do that through, that coaching?
It's through just I can't remember what they're even called. It's like a one weekend a month at the moment that you're immersed in the course. What I love about it, and again because I love people, it's a load of it is neuroscience. It's learning the brain, and especially learning what happens to the brain when your stress bucket is full. And that's what happened to me last year. It's like learning exactly what went wrong. If you keep putting into your stress bucket, you are not going to be okay. No. And it's around helping people identify that behaviour isn't working. So let's get you out of that. Let's backtrack and then let's move forward.
I've been being through my own sort of mental health struggles.
Yeah.
You always come back stronger from that.
Of course
as well,
you
don't
do.
You know, it's sort of. I think it better prepares you for everything else. And ironically, I had a bit of a. We had a second daughter, and I just felt like work was on top, and I just ended up overly stressed. But that was all before COVID. So by the time COVID came around, I was like, the world was melting on itself, and I was like, I'm fine with this because I was coming back from those other tough times. So when I met with you, I think it was last month, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
You were talking about a premises. Have you managed to? Have you got something sorted yet?
So Abby joined the team yesterday. I have a potential somebody else that I'm hoping will join, and then we will find our home together. I want it to be in Sheffield. I don't know where yet. Probably not the city centre, maybe outskirts, because I envisage pathways will be very much on my feet in woods and parks and walking, because I think you have your best thoughts and you're much calmer when you're outside. So my vision with pathways is a lot of that will be outside rather than in an office, but having that space where people can come and park and sit inside when it's raining as well.
I've got a client actually that's their office is bang across from Botanical Gardens.
Oh yeah,
and
something like that, perfect.
He runs every lunchtime.
Yeah, that kind of space would be perfect. Yeah. And because pathways for me, that is all solution focused, and so I think there's something about being, walking. I'd say even when you walk, your pace when you speak is different to when you're.
There's a lot of Sheffield solicitors going out to Hathersage and creating their offices there. So because that main reason, and just to completely out the way, rather than if they go for their lunch in town, like probably 3 or 4 of the clients are on the streets of Tesco's begging. So that's why they do it, just to get away. I was talking to a solicitor last week, and that's exactly why he's done it. Just want to get away from it, go to court, and it's an escape for them when they get out and they go for walks on lunchtime.
It's like today as well, the city centre stuff. It's sort of like just the chore of, I've got the bus in today, because the idea of bringing the car in and getting parked, it's just an added stress. So how long have I got in the car? Whereas get on the bus, at least I can sort of be away. But I must admit, I'd interviewed at several places, and they were in city centres and stuff, and you were like, how do you go on for parking? And it was like, I just thought, not for me.
Well, see, I live in Hallam, which I love. I love walking everywhere. So I live in Hallam, and I can park my car at my house in Hallam, so I can walk into town, and that's great. But I have got myself now in a place of where I've worked from home. I literally work on my own all day and at home, where I want to go out. I want to be out of the house. So I love frog marching up the city into a meeting somewhere. But I also kind of miss, very weirdly, that kind of commute, that downtime, of that's my work. I have no separation really now.
I'm not. I mean, I don't miss a commute, don't get me wrong, but it's the camaraderie. And I always knew that when people were asking me, why don't you go and do your own thing? It's sort of, and ironically, I used to go in 2 days a week, and I just went in for a social. I always worked harder at home, working from home. I was more productive, but 2 days a week, I'd just go in and have I'd still work, but I'd more have a chin wag with people.
Yeah. That's important though.
And that is what I'm missing at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm the same. And I think, again, my kind of vision for why am I getting an office, when so many people have moved away, is I think you need that project space. You need that kind of studio environment, whatever you want to call it, of, right, can we get around a table and can we talk about what's good, what's not going well, where anyone needs support. What you got up to over the weekend, it is so important to have those conversations, and they're not the same on the phone. And I've spent now the last, since literally since COVID, it's been 5 years, hasn't it? Working from home, being on the phone all day long, sure, speaking to people constantly, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
What would you say have been the biggest challenges you faced in your career, really, in your whole situation?
Last year was
Last year,
tough,
yeah.
but that was me.
Right.
Going through life change, running a business was really tough. I don't even know if I realised how tough it was until I've now come out the other side
Right.
and realised that I was not operating properly. And there was a reason for that. It's because my life literally was just like bleh, up in the air,
Right.
and that's fine.
Yeah,
You know that it's all come good, and I'm
Happens, isn't it?
happier
Yeah.
than I've ever been now. That has been my biggest challenge,
Right.
and I don't think until very, very recently I have actually acknowledged that and said to myself,
Right.
well done, because you know.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think I was too in it.
Okay.
I was just too in it, getting through the survival of day to week
Right.
to month to the end of the year. Yeah. That's been my biggest challenge personally.
Right.
The market obviously dictates a
definitely.
huge amount, doesn't it? And I'm sure you can attest to that, James. You know, when the market's good and you're busy, it's amazing. But there have been a huge amount of political and economical challenges over the last few years specifically. I'd say recruitment's changed because of that. It certainly feels, from when I started in 2013, a very different space to operate in. But in some ways that excites me about it more.
What would you advise? I mean, we're here at the University of Sheffield. What would you? We were talking to Louisa earlier, saying about, she was talking about there's a massive high retention rate of students who stay in Sheffield maybe because they want to work and stuff like that. What
Yeah.
would your message be to students who are leaving here now and trying to find work in Sheffield? What would be your main message to them about going to find work? Do you think it's a vibrant place to work, or do you think it's struggling, or is it?
I think it's vibrant, but I
Yeah.
think be open to opportunity. So it's hard. It depends on what your degree is, obviously. You know,
Yeah.
I came out of degree with a degree that's fairly generic, but I think don't be a barrier. Don't put up walls. Go and have coffees with employers.
Yeah.
Start roles and be open to it, because everyone's career. Well, so many people's careers aren't just a straight line of, right, you graduate here, then you end up
Definitely not.
exactly. So just be really open and embrace opportunity and embrace conversations, and know that maybe that job will form part of your career. And I'd say the same to businesses.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Lou, actually, I think this came from Lou, where she said, you know, some people will be with you for a short time, others will be with you for a long time, and you have to kind of accept that as part of the journey.
Definitely.
So don't get cross if somebody doesn't stay with you for 5 years. That's okay, because when you employ somebody, you have to acknowledge that, you know, there's something that you're both getting out of them. And if you're, you know, like we all want progression and growth, say, well, most of us, lots of us do. You might not always be able to offer that as a business. And if you can't, you have to let them go. And that's okay. You know, that is absolutely okay. I think we have to be more open to that, and open to especially younger generations coming up. You know, Gen Z did
Yeah.
a talk on that recently. It's changing. And,
Yeah.
and I think the quicker we acknowledge that it's changing, potentially for the better, potentially you're going to get people that are going to embrace roles, throw themselves in it, and then move on at the right time, instead of becoming stagnant, becoming afraid, getting imposter syndrome, whatever it is.
I think it's hard to get a lot of those generation to answer the phone. I'll come back to you on email.
It's all different, isn't it?
It's quite. I mean, I'm a bit. You sound a bit more optimistic about that the future than I.
I think I like change, James. I think I do embrace it. I'm a millennial, and I remember us getting loads of shit about it, and I remember thinking, hang on, I'm okay. You know, I quite like working. I'll work hard.
Yeah.
You can't put us all in a bracket. Each generation's been a bit different.
I don't know why it came to my head then, just listening to you say that, but I heard Dana White the other day sort of talking about the fact that back in the day you had to be a savage just to get by, and he said you don't nowadays. So I think a little bit like the recruitment, you can kind of, you know, if you apply yourself and
Yeah.
do what you're meant to do, you can kind of really
think
push
so.
on. It's not that you're better than anybody else, but I think, like you say, it's about being open to.
I couldn't agree more.
So,
Ben,
yeah.
it touches on that again, doesn't it? About saying, have a conversation.
Yeah.
That might not be your dream job, but you don't know where that conversation might take you. And such a huge amount of recruitment is around culture fit and values and aligning those. So if more people embraced recruitment strategies like that, everything else can be taught.
And again, it's one of those where, I mean, as you know, I've started from scratch just before Christmas, and it is tough at the minute. There's a lot of, you know, recruitment spend freezers and all that kind of stuff. And it's easy to kind of convince yourself, you know, you're not going to, but just that one phone call sometimes just sort of opens up.
Yeah, I've always been more motivated by that and the relationship and doing the right thing for that business or person than I have about chasing the money.
Yeah.
I'd always rather, you know, be hanging out with the right people than chasing it. I think everything else kind of follows.
Let's get to know Becca the person.
Oh, go on.
What are your hobbies and interests? What makes you tick? What's your outside of work? What do you get up to outside of work?
Other than drinking lots of Pinot.
Well, it helps, doesn't it? That's a start.
So we've already talked about running this morning. I love running. So I got into running in lockdown and have absolutely found a sport that I love.
Yeah.
Growing up, I was a swimmer.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah, so swam probably 4 or 5 times a week and was a really, really good swimmer. But then, you know, came to uni and had a nice time. So that stopped. So I do swim, but not as much as I now run. I love running. That has become a huge part of my life.
Right.
I actually, very odd, I use it as a reward-based system for work.
Okay.
So I'll set myself tasks for the day, and once I've done it, I allow myself to go for a run. And I find that's how I decompartmentalise everything out of my head, and I have my best ideas when I'm running. So I love that. I'm not
Where
running.
do you tend to run from?
Well, it's very boring. My standard run is up Penistone Road because it's flat, and sadly it's well lit in winter, and you have to kind of think about that stuff. But I'll go out to Dam Flask is lovely.
Dam Flask is really
but
good,
also if I'm doing a really long run, I'll go somewhere like Derwent because you can do a good half marathon around Derwent. So yeah, I absolutely love that. I love going away. I go home a lot, and I've got a niece and a nephew who are absolutely own my heart, and they're in Dorset, so I go down to Dorset quite a lot. So I've got friends everywhere, so I'm always on the road, and yeah, I'd say they're my main hobbies.
Yeah.
Skiing. I go
Good
skiing once a year with my pals. That's good fun.
Whereabouts do you go there?
Went to Val Thorens this year. Not sure we'll be going back. That was absolutely wild.
Why? Just mad.
Well, it turned out to be Belgium week, and it was just full
right.
of party animals from Belgium. I was absolutely exhausted. It took me weeks to get over that.
What's your favourite type of music?
It literally depends what I'm doing. So if I'm working, I listen to what I call plinky plonky music.
What's that?
Smooth chill. Obsessed.
I like it.
Obsessed, literally. If I'm running, I like something poppy and dancey.
Yeah.
I'm quite eclectic. I like a bit of anything. I wouldn't say I completely have a type, but I'm very kind of light and sound and mood. That all flows for me. So, you know, I like a nice, quiet, plinky plonky in the background.
Have you adopted either Sheffield football sides as your own, or you're not interested in?
So conflicting, because lots of my pals support Wednesday.
Oh, we've just had this with Louisa. Louisa's edged
yeah, and my partner supports United. So
there you go. That's exactly.
And also, I've been to both clubs. So maybe I flirt with them all.
That's it. Louisa just
not loyal. Sorry, guys.
Louisa texts you that answer, hasn't she?
No, she hasn't. And Hereford don't have a football club, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah,
Hereford United have gone, so, you know, I can't
Yeah.
support them. So my dad weirdly supported West Brom. I feel like we went to see them when we were kids, but I don't support them either. So,
It's your dad's team.
Who do you think we should interview next for the winners of
that's a
Sheffield
great
podcast?
question. Oh, that's a hard one on the spot. I'd have to have a think about that, but I'm sure there's lots of people that I could recommend you to speak to. But yeah, that's a tough one on the spot.
Yeah. I should have messaged you
Yeah.
that.
I feel like I'm overthinking it now.
What's your plan for this afternoon? Is Friday afternoon a DOS off, or are you still
No,
working?
I'm planning my first workshop actually this afternoon that I'm delivering.
So what will be involved in them workshops?
So the plan is to get a mix of businesses in the room.
Okay.
And then we've set themes. So the first one is going to be on resilience, and then so hopefully there'll be a round table of multiple businesses that are there to engage and learn about resilience. And then
How do you target them businesses? Just sending out invites? Or,
and so that'll be coming out from next week.
Right.
I'm going to be LinkedIn galore.
Oh, is that what you're going to do it through?
Yeah, and send and directly, you know, messaging people that I think should come along.
Right.
Why can't I think of anyone to recommend to you? What about someone like Arnie?
Arnie Singh?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never actually met Arnie, but I know.
Why not
Paul
someone like
Gosney,
Arnie? Arnie, you know, because he built up a business, he sold it, it's changed, it's evolved.
It's like the biggest taxi firm in
Yeah,
the,
why not someone like that?
Yeah. I'll reach out.
Because
to Arnie.
so I did Common Purpose, and James Hope Gill, who you interviewed.
Yeah.
He and I and Arnie, we were all in the cohort together in like a little group together.
We are all right.
I saw James a few weeks ago, and we were going to arrange a few drinks. But yeah, I'd suggest someone like Arnie.
Good. That's a good
James'
suggestion.
interview was an interesting one.
Was
I'll
it?
just say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
When
It was like a comedy sketch.
He's hilarious, James.
Well, more circumstantial.
It was just-
So because obviously he's skateboard GB, I contacted the skate house, which is on Kelham, and said, "Can we come in and record it?" And he was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And he was like, "It's actually school holidays that week, so I'll come and open an hour early. Well, you can have the interview in the cafe." And I was like, "Brilliant." Anyway, he gets to the car park. James is pulling up. And like it's locked, so we like stood outside chatting for 10-15 minutes, aren't we? And I was like, "Yeah, I don't think this is happening." So we went round the corner to Steelyard, and there must have been something going on, weren't there?
Yeah.
There was like construction workers coming in and out and all sorts. And
I think they did it deliberately, no, but they turned this massive music screen on, and that just came on, and halfway through an interview, it was just like, "Hit me, baby."
Oh,
one
that's
more
so
time." And I was
funny.
like, "What is happening here?"
and then I've actually got a student at Leeds. She's sort of she's been editing it, but she says it sounds really weird. So I was thinking about it earlier. Actually, I'm at the point where when she sends it back to me, I've not seen it but when she sends it back to me, because she's sort of made out like it's really bad. And I'm sort of going to have to go to him and sort of say, "Do you want me to just put it out as is, or do you want to do it again?"
Do it again, do it smell like
invite
this.
him here, you know.
Yeah,
That's
this is
it.
lovely.
It
Get him in
could
the
be on your
studio.
own this now that we can
Yeah.
finally sorted and booked it. It's not bad, is it?
No,
It's
it's
a
it's
record.
good. Resident, you're the
Yeah,
first.
after book.
Delighted. Someone else as well to consider, if you've not already, is Jill White,
July.
the mum of Sheffield Business.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
From Andy Huntsman and Jill. They're a team, husband and
Right.
wife team. But Jill is like the mum of Sheffield Business.
I didn't know that.
She's wonderful. So she'd be somebody that I'd also say would
Right,
be,
okay.
Yeah.
you know, inspiring. Knows. So she's. I think her background's from the university, so she's really around. She calls her Hallam babies. You know, kind of gone on
Yeah.
to become entrepreneurs. But they run 3D Connect, which is a networking consultancy in terms of going into businesses, but also. That's where I met one of my best mates. Was on one of
Was
their
it?
leadership
Right.
courses, actually, Grace. So
I'm
yes, if you see
hoping
somebody
that
else.
the Louisa episode kind of unlocks
I'm sure it
certain people
Yeah.
that like we've asked and
Yeah.
haven't come back to us or
Yeah.
whatever kind of
I'm
thing.
sure it will. Who did Lucy?
Said James O'Hara.
James O'Hara.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. I'll give you two.
That's
See?
it.
That's it. 2 for 1.
2 for 1, yeah. But no, other than that, thank you very much for joining us
Thank
today.
Keep your eye out on the Benchmark Pathways invitations on LinkedIn.
Yep. Yeah.
Mate.
And my website will be launching this month.
Oh, website
It's
plugging up.
coming. It's coming
When's that going to be out? Just this month?
before the end of this month. Yeah. I'm reviewing the final copy on Monday, so it will launch literally in the next couple of weeks.
We'll
Fantastic.
make sure we post that
Exciting
when we
times.
post the video out. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the studio, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.